Good evening and welcome to the intersection on Labour Social. I'm Rachel Harris. Tonight we have feminist campaigner Patsy Stevenson joining us. Welcome, Patsy, to Labour Social.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Now, looking at your profile online, how would you? I found it quite extensive and overwhelming. How would you describe yourself?
Just a campaigner, I think. Yeah, campaigner and writer. That'll do.
Okay, campaigner and writer. Okay, and very good TED Talk, which I asked people should go and check out as well. But we'll come on to that. So I want to talk a little bit about feminism this evening. Just a little bit of a chat about that, and we'll just see where the conversation goes to. Nothing too deep. It's my first toe in the water with this as well. So, what is feminism, and what does it mean to you?
God, it's so broad, isn't it? I think that's the point. Actually, it's supposed to be broad, and some people try to minimize it and make it very small. But I think it covers a lot in our society. You know, even covers like patriarchy affecting men, which a lot of people are annoyed at. A lot of men get annoyed at, like, oh, women's rights is always about women, when actually patriarchy affects everyone. And yeah, I think that feminism, I heard someone say that it's about equity, and it's not necessarily equality, but equity is because everyone has their own complex needs and their own different things that they've been through. So it's not necessarily that we all need to be paid the exact same wage. It's why we're not being paid certain things, and what reasons are, like in workspaces, there are different reasons for people taking time off or needing to work from home, or things that happen in work. So I think it's important. I think feminism, I don't know why people aren't feminists. That's what I want to say. Because it just seems baffling. I know there's a lot of anti-feminists around at the moment. And I just don't see the point. You're attacking yourself, basically. So it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's really good. And thank you. Now, there was obviously the start of the feminist movement in the 60s and 70s, the burning of the bra movement, and it's been going 50 years. Why do we still need it?
I think we're gonna need it for a very long time, unfortunately. I think we're in a stage of feminism at the moment where I truly believe this, in my own personal opinion, I believe that over the COVID pandemic, a lot of young men have gone down an anti-feminist route because they've gone online and been quite lonely during the pandemic. Everyone was lonely. Everyone had hardly anything to do. It was a very traumatic time for a lot of people. And so they went online and, I was going to say role models, but they're not role models. People in like public figure places, positions like Andrew Tate, but they know how to talk to young men, and they know how to, it's like almost grooming them, because they lead them down a path that is really hateful and isolating, actually. And so I think over the COVID pandemic, a lot of people, a lot of young men especially, have gone down that route. And so now I think we're seeing a rise in anti-feminist rhetoric, and just today I saw, like, there's a thing going around in New York where women are being punched in the face because of a game called the Knockout Game. And it's never ending. So I think we're always going to need feminism. I think feminism should be a commonplace thing in everyday life, in everyone's everyday life. I think so.
Yeah, it sounds like feminism is like, well, LGBT rights, for instance. We thought we had won those rights and we thought we were there, but it feels like feminism's the same. You can never rest. You can't say, right, we're done now. We've got equal rights. Everything is done. We can all go home. It feels like something we're always going to have to continue to fight for.
Yeah, it's a constant, isn't it? Because people change, societies change, government change, policies change. There's so many things that change. And throughout my life, like I'm a queer woman, so I've seen, when I was younger in school, I was harassed, bullied, like, for being queer, because I knew at a very young age. And I went through absolute hell. And then when I got older, it became more acceptable. But then I got a bit more older, and there was more things going on that were very traumatic. And it's been an up and down sort of roller coaster. like you said, it's just a constant trying to keep it at an equilibrium where we're just not, where we're just safe, you know, where everyone's equal.
Really interesting. And I mean, I really like the point you were talking about lockdown. I mean, the rise of the anti-trans movement really turbocharged during lockdown, and the rise of the incel movement and feminism seems to, they've really pushed into the feminism space, as far as feminist space as I can see, the Andrew Tate, as you say. You know, the followings and the funding and the especially in America, how does that, you know, how do you push back against that? I mean, I just saw in the UK, for instance, you know, the inclusion of women and men had been going up on a curve, and then in the UK it's just tipped down for men, and women continue to become more inclusive, and it's just tipped down. And how do we counteract that?
Well, I think there's always pushback, so I think it's kind of a positive in a weird way. It's like a silver lining. So not a silver lining, that's the wrong terminology, but it's kind of a good thing, because I think that because women's rights was going up so much, and everyone was being more inclusive and realizing what's going on, when people lose power, when groups lose power, they get scared and they try and fight back. So it's this pushback and pull and push. So, you know, we see, for example, okay, women gain some rights, and then now there's groups of women who are anti-trans because they're scared of this power that's imaginary, actually, but they're scared of losing what they think they've like got to lose, that's not actually being taken from them. And it's a similar thing with men as well. So with men, you know, they've seen, oh, women's empowerment has gone up a bit, we don't want to lose power. What do? Let's go and make games where we punch them on the street. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's always that pushback of people, the certain group that's in power at the time get very scared, and even subconsciously, and I think they push back, and that's what we're seeing at the moment is quite a pushback. But it does mean that it's kind of working though, so hopefully it's a positive.
Yeah, I like that positive. I'm going to take that. I like the positives. So what are I mean, at the moment, you know, what you're doing in your campaigning, what are the live issues? I know there was upskirting and there was the Voyeurism Act and all that. What other live issues are going on at the moment that you're campaigning?
Well, I'm doing a few. I'm helping with a few. So I've just become an ambassador for Selfhood, which is just about gender liberation for all. So because the government is trying to put through the plan, I'm not sure if they've actually done it yet. I think the deadline they put it out to the public, and then they say, what do you think of this? And if the public say definitely not, then they're not likely to put it through, or they can still put it through because it's the government. But the deadline to respond to that was the 12th of March. And so I worked with Selfhood. What's it called? The guidance that they've put forward is for trans kids in schools, and that teachers need to definitely out them to their parents, which can be really dangerous. You know, kids need a place of safety. I know I did when I was a kid coming out, and I had teachers I could talk to. If they had told my parents, I would have been in big trouble. So, you know, I think what we're trying to do at the moment is trying to get that guidance out and say, we definitely don't want this. If it goes through or tries to go through, of course, that's where we escalate to demos and things like that. And yeah, I mean, there's so many campaigns running at the moment, but I think it's important. Someone said to me on Twitter the other day about how campaigning for things to make them criminalized doesn't always work, because you're giving police more powers and prison systems don't work, so we're not actually achieving much change. But I don't entirely agree with that, because I think real change takes a long time. And we have to do things in the short term just to protect people. So I don't agree with the prison system. I don't agree with police powers, obviously, but sometimes we need to put things in place and make sure that some people are protected by laws. That's the whole point. So
little steps, and often that's why I look at it. Otherwise it does become overwhelming, especially when there's a big sort of pushback on rights. You have to just dust yourself down, take that first step. I looked at some of the stuff that you've been involved. So Voyeurism Act was the thing about upskirting that came out, especially in the UK. What about spiking? What's the current Where are we on spiking drinks and stuff at the moment?
Yeah, so spiking was the one that I did an interview for Sky News the other day on
Yeah.
it.
Can you tell a bit more about that?
Yeah, I spoke to the egalitarian who also have just offered me an ambassadorship, so I think I'm going to be quite busy this year. But it's they're doing a campaign to make spiking a standalone offence, because at the moment it can only really be an offence if there's like an intent proved, and that if there's other things around like why this person has been spiked, it's really hard to prove as well, because you can't really trace it in the system. It goes out of the system really quickly. People obviously don't really like to have an investigation to see if you've been assaulted. That's not a great way to go either, because that's traumatic for many people. So, I think making spiking a standalone offence just says if you spike someone, that's an offence done. You don't need any of the add-ons that are really hard to prove. And obviously, so I've been spiked as well, and I don't know if it was the guy that I was with. Obviously, I have no proof. I don't know whether he put something in my drink or it was someone else, but I think, speaking to charities sometimes is really helpful, because I know that a lot of stuff's happened to me in the past, and I'll probably come out about all of it eventually. And it's really great that other people then came onto the tweet that I posted and said their stories, and everyone came out about it. And so Egalitarian were doing a survey on how often it happens and where it happens and what type, so that they've got a more rounded view of spiking itself and how to prevent it.
It does seem to be, it's, I was in the club scene in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, because I'm very old. But I don't remember people spiking people's drinks. It just seems to be, but now all my female friends have stories about being spiked, or they know somebody that's been. This feels like it's an epidemic. It just feels overwhelming.
I think it comes part and parcel with the rise of the incel culture. Because I think it's, if you can't get a woman, you have to do it a different way or something. It just, I think that, to be honest, I think people like Andrew Tate have promoted that ideology as well, because I'm actually the ambassador I'm the spokesperson for Andrew Tate's 4 victims in the UK. And so I've spoken to them one-on-one directly, and I've heard their stories. And, I'm baffled, number one, that anyone even thinks that they're lying or that there's any question over what Andrew Tate's done. But some of the things he does promote is, you can do what you want to women and take what you want. And that's the way to be a man. And it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it really is. And it just feels really overwhelming, quite frightening for a lot of people. So thank you for that. As a feminist, what are the challenges within the feminist movement? Where's the feminist movement failing as a cohesive group?
I think quite a lot of places at the moment, to be honest, which is sad. I think we did, like I said, we did achieve quite a lot maybe a couple of years ago. But now we're still achieving. And I think that's a daily thing, is that I see my friends sort of achieving things and pushing laws through or what they need to do. But I think, I was surprised. So I will talk about like how I got involved in trans rights activism.
Okay. Well. Yeah, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, because
interest.
it's a really, for me, it's quite interesting because I didn't realize. So it was like a bit of a learning journey for me. So, I grew up in working class environment, but my family is quite their views are quite right wing. I've tried to change them now, but they were quite, there was a lot of misogyny and racism and homophobia and all of that stuff. So I grew up around a lot of queer people because that was my crowd, and there were trans people in our groups, and it just like that. Nothing ever occurred to me that it would be an issue in feminist groups that they would be excluding certain people. And so when I've always been like pro-trans rights 100%, never on the fence, but when I got to being arrested afterwards, the first interview I did, the some group came up to me and said, "Can we have your first interview?" And I was like, "Okay, this is a bit odd." But someone next to me said, "By the way, they're like anti-trans." I was like, "Oh, really? Okay." So I made a point of saying, I stand up for all women, cis women, trans women, everyone. And their faces dropped, and I was like, "Oh, okay, right, got ya."
Yeah.
So after that, I was invited to a lot of groups. I went to galas, this and that, and that was very overwhelming. But at the same time, I learned a lot very quickly, and I learned that a lot of the feminist organizations and charities and groups, almost all of them, which is really scary, are transphobic in some way or another. And I've had to learn the terminology that they use, because they hide it, because if they don't hide it, then they get cancelled, or sometimes they don't, but a lot of them are very sneaky about it. And so that really, I don't know, there's some groups now that are huge, that are really big, and I know that they're transphobic, and I try and tell people that they're transphobic, and people don't often listen, and I'm like, but I know the terminology they're using. And oftentimes when I've been asked to work with certain groups, and I just say, just want to ask, do you agree with trans rights? It's either yes or it's a long if it's a long paragraph, we don't have a conversation here. I don't want to talk to you. Do you know what I mean? There's no point in having this discussion, So I've had that quite a few times. And I think I'm going to get emotional talking about
No, it's okay. No.
but just because sorry, it's because like I've had people that follow me who are like, well, I want to be a feminist, but I don't feel included in them groups and stuff. And so it really means a lot to me that a lot of my followers who are trans and non-binary come to my DMs and say, "Oh, this is going on." Like one of them is telling me about dates that she's going on because she can't tell anyone else at the moment. Do you know what I mean? And that's it's really nice to have that safe space, but also a community who know that feminism is for everyone, and that's the whole point. So I really, really, really hope that we start putting some laws in place, some regulations, where I just don't think people in feminist organizations should be allowed to be transphobic. I just think it's ridiculous.
Well, that's amazing to hear, Patsy. Thank you. It's good allyship there. And I do think, because I know lots of as I'm always talking about on Labour Social, I'm Conor McLeod of the Clan McLeod. I'm really quite old, and I go back quite a long way. And a lot of my feminist friends who are inclusively feminist, they were back at Greenham Common in the days of being chained to the railings and getting arrested and stuff. And they are very trans inclusive, because they can see that trans women have the same misogyny, attacks, and the same issues. And that we're kind of like the canary in the mine for a lot of non-trans women, in a way that if you look at America, or you look in some Eastern European countries, the organizations that are funding the attacks on trans women, break the TOA. I mean, trans guys are non-binary as well, but it's trans women that seem to be at the brunt. If you break the TOA, LGBT collapses, because we're not there to allyship to the whole community, and then they're after women's rights. And you can see that in America. These fun, huge, mega right-wing organizations flooding money into the UK are funding a lot of anti-trans rhetoric, but they're really after women's body autonomy. They're after women's rights. And trans people are like, if it's happening to trans women in particular, it's going to happen to all of you. We're just the first. We're the canary's dead. It's in the cage, and we are toppled. And we're trying to defend our rights and all rights. Why lots of non-inclusive feminist groups are chucking mud at us, which is very frustrating.
Yeah.
So one thing we probably do share then, because you're online, and I know I don't have any social media, because I am one of those rare beasts that came off it all 2 years ago. Good mental health. How do you cope with it? Because it was overwhelming for me. Eventually, how do you cope with social media, and how do you deal? What did you just block? Do you engage? How do you engage? And give some advice to a lot of our viewers, especially when they watch stuff that I do on here. They're all on social media going, Rachel was a break. How do you cope with that?
Well, I mean, so I have BPD, which is borderline personality disorder. So it means that, like, when I have certain emotions, they can be really heightened.
Yeah.
So, when this first happened, when I went viral, I was really I was suicidal because of what happened, because of all of the trauma of the online death threats, everything. I've had probably the worst amount of social media comeback. Do you know what I mean? Like it was just like every day, just thousands and thousands of like, you're a piece of shit. You know, it was. Sorry, am I allowed to swear?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. But yeah, it was just like non-stop. So, and I think it's tough because it depends what you're dealing with at the time.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone should expect to manage things the way that other people manage things. And I'll say that first and foremost, because I've had a long time dealing with it. And like I said, I've been bullied from a very young age profusely. You know, I'm a redhead as well. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing about me that wasn't ready to be bullied. So, so yeah, I think for me, one way that I do manage it and sort of deal with it that's tended to work. Number one, I don't insult anyone, like ever. And that's, again, if people want to insult people, that's fine too, because I know some really strong activists that do insult people, and that's fine too. This is just the way that I deal with it, because if you're frustrated, I get it, you know. But for me, you know, like J.K. Rowling, for example, I'm going to call her Joanne because I like that, Joanne. Right? So Joanne, she was posted something, and someone had a bit of a pop at her, but someone commented afterwards saying about her like crow's feet and like wrinkles and stuff, and I was like, whoa, there's no need to make digs. People having crow's feet and wrinkles is perfectly normal. That's a normal thing. I don't like the woman, but it doesn't mean I'm going to attack her looks. Do you know what I mean? So that's like, I don't think we need to, actually. There's not, you know, even Pretty Patel, she drove me insane, but at the same time, I'm not going to attack certain things about her.
Yeah.
Like the way she looks or the way she's, you know, it just doesn't sit right with me. So number one, I try not to insult anyone. I don't think I ever have on Twitter. And then I think I try and talk to people, which again is not for everyone. Some people have gone through so much trauma and so many things. You don't have to explain yourself to people. But I'm in a position where I'm able to do that, where people, you know, they'll comment something nasty on a post or something, and I'll say, hey, you want to chat about this in my DMs? Let's come away from everyone and we'll talk in my DMs. My DMs are always open, and we have a little conversation, and they end up, this always happens, like probably once or twice it's not happened, but all the other times they apologize and go, oh my God, I was so wrong. And then their mind is changed, and then they comment on the things and say, oh my God, I've changed my mind, I'm so sorry. Going to leave the comment there just for people to understand that this is how it went wrong. And I'm like, this is, you know, this is good. I think it comes from, I've got a life coach. This sounds really weird. So I have a life coach, but I met him on a train years ago, and he randomly was like, I help people. Do you want some help with what you do? Because I've seen you on the news. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I see him once every couple of months. He was, he saw the Troubles in Ireland.
Yeah.
And so his main rhetoric is for peace, for everyone. And so I try to take bits of what he's doing to try and work it into my own life as well, where like it's really hard because there are some people out there who are completely beyond helping and changing. But if you can try, I want to try and be that person that's trying to just little bits of peace here and there just to try and change people's minds every now and again, you know?
Yeah, I do. That's amazing. I mean, it is little victories, and often that's the way I try to look at it. I think stepping away from social media for me really helped. Because I, you know, when I used to do talks, I used to say, well, you know, I've never changed a mind on social media, but I have to admit I never really tried, because it wasn't just social media. We were getting letters and death threats and all sorts of horrible stuff that you get. So I had to make but actually those some of the campaigners that are still there is actually a lot of DMing going on off the public side of X, which I hadn't realized. And your story really backs that up. There's a lot of one by one victories.
Yeah.
I really like save one person, save the world, as they say. So, you know, so Patsy, let's get down and personal. Who are your villains and who are your heroes? Who are your influencers? So let's talk about your heroes? Who influences you?
I think politically, I think Zara Sultana and Nadia Whittome
Oh, good choices.
are so good. I think because I think it was Nadia Whittome who she's like put some of her bonus to like supporting charities and people in, you know, certain communities, which is, if I was a politician, I'm thinking of running for MP just to get the paycheck so I could share it out. Do you know what I mean? Like how, like that's quite a big paycheck for like, I don't know if they, I know Nadia and Zara Sultana do a lot, but I don't think a lot of them do too much. So
Oh, I like that. And is there a political career in your future, do you think?
I have been asked
Ooh.
several times by several different. Do you know what? I've been asked by different parties, and that's a bit wild. By 3 separate parties, and I'll leave that one with you. But I think it's a difficult one because I think I've seen it in there. I've been in Parliament a lot, and I've seen bribery. I've seen all sorts of stuff, and I know it's big political game, and it's like, would I change anything? Would I be able to change anything? Also, I think you're like quietened when you're in a, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm quite loud. It might not suit me. I don't know.
Well, it feels, there are some dark influences in the public halls, that are particularly against trans people who have the ears and grab the MPs, and they're always there. It'd be good to have some positive allies, so it'd be good to have you there.
Oh yeah, might look into it.
Fingers crossed. Non-political heroes. If you don't feel comfortable with that question, that's okay.
No, that's fine. I think one of my heroes, I say this every time I'm interviewed about this sort of thing, Chantal Lunt.
Okay, can you tell me who that is? Yeah.
She is amazing. She's my friend that I spoke about who did the Story House panel. She's phenomenal. She is the founder of Merseyside Black Lives Matter. She's a counsellor. She's just got a law degree, I'm pretty sure, as well as being a mum. She does so many things.
Yeah.
And she's always so informed and so, I don't know. I love it. I think I'm absolutely in love with her. Like she's just my idol. But she's the person who actually gave me the microphone the first time. So I went to like a Kill the Bill protest after I was arrested to see what it was all about, because my pictures were on the posters and stuff, and I was like, I don't even know what's going on. So I went there and spoke to her, and she just gave me the microphone and a post-it note, and she said, write down some points. And I still got the post-it note. I wrote down like 3 little points. She was like, talk about it, and I did. And then from then on, I just started doing talks, and I don't know. I kind of owe her my life, I think. But yeah, she's. Like everyone should follow Chantal Lunt. Like,
Villains.
So
political first.
Rishi Sunak. He is. I could talk about it all day, I reckon. I just think that he. Have you seen that clip where he goes to a soup kitchen and asks the guy? He's like, "Oh yeah, so what business are you in?" Or so, and it's like, Rishi, mate, listen, what are you doing? I heard about this. There's a place in America that this woman inherited like £1 billion, and she gave it to this university that does like medical university. And so people have tuition. Anyone that goes to that university has free tuition for forever.
Wow.
It's paid for everyone's tuition. So the amount of things that money can do is ridiculous, especially if it's invested. Rishi could do so much with his wealth. So much. But he doesn't care, and that's, I don't think that just, it's hard for, like not long ago I was back in my hometown, Essex, Southend, and I know that many people there are struggling with poverty on the lowest end of the scale. They're struggling to feed their own kids, and I don't know how Rishi sits in his big house with all these piles of money whilst you're the leader of a country. For me, a leader doesn't take wealth and just hoard it themselves. If I was in that position, I feel like if a lot of people, I know a lot of people who in that position, they would just share the wealth. It's not hard to do, especially if you've got it in investments as well. So it's still accumulating more money.
Yeah.
It's
And
just mad.
and you're a physicist, right? And I often tell people that, you know, the work that I do, you know, we run a charity and we run a business and we donate because I believe in quantum mechanics. I always talk about this on Labour Social on a Friday night, that you have to do good to receive good. It's karma. It's basically karma. And when I go, well, Star Trek, it's a quantum mechanics thing. Money moves. So you give money, money comes in. You give love, love comes back. The world is connected. Positive vibes, positive vibes. So I'm always telling people that if you have £1 billion and you give most of it away, well, you actually more of it's going to come flying at you. It's that philanthropic thing. But hoarding it and building your bunker for waiting for the end of the world is not the way to go. It just doesn't seem.
No, like, who is that helping? Like, yeah, I just think you end up really lonely and really sad if you've got a lot of money.
Yeah.
But also, I'm a Trekkie as well.
Oh, excellent. you know, almost my favorite, because obviously Graham is my number one, but you are my favorite interviewee. There you go.
Oh, thank you.
If you're a Trekkie, you're in. You see,
I'm TOS though. I'm
original series, eh? Wow, there you go. I mean, we could do a half an hour on. I got asked on I was doing a mental health panel, and halfway through, the interviewer asked me, "Who's your favorite captain?" Which then took longer than the panel did. Because I was then, well, I quite like Archer, but then there's Picard, and but because he's kind of but Janeway, well, she was a woman and she was powerful, and you just go off, don't you? Really?
I'm just obsessed with Spock. That's my main.
New Spock, Calvin Universe Spock, old Spock,
like old Spock, like Leonard Nimoy, because so he got me into physics in the first place. I don't do physics anymore because I failed my degree because of the death threats. But I go into AI. That's what I've got into. But when I first watched him in, oh my God, my first episode, season 1, episode 18, it's called Arena, where Kirk fights the Gorn. And it's literally, when I saw Spock, I was like, because that was the first one I watched, and I saw Spock and I thought he is magnificent. Because I didn't realize that science and physics was about what it was about. I thought it was about cars and stuff and boring stuff. But anyway, I'm divulging into a different topic.
Not at all. I mean, it's how we get into the shit that we do is really important.
Yeah.
You know, I was a software engineer for a long time, and that was Star Trek. You know, got me into it. I mean, I think that it's like Data, and he's the best actor in The Next Generation in a way. You think he has to act in that role right through. And I think, you know, amazing actor actually. And it's just, I don't know, it really just, you know, and it's the perfect world. People from different backgrounds working together to solve problems. It's lovely. It's like Harry Potter used to be.
I know, right? It was
but yeah.
Like, even with because like when they did the kiss with Uhura, and it was like the first ever on-screen kiss that was you know, multiracial, and it was like, oh well, you know, they kept messing up all the other scenes apparently, so that they had to air that scene. And it's just like a little thing. It was so ahead of its time, you know. And
I understood that kiss was meant to be with Spock originally, but because obviously in the Calvin universe, Spock dates Uhura, but Kurt went, no, I'm having a bit of that, you know. So it was him kissing Uhura, wasn't it? So it was it's amazing how they changed it, because Kurt was like, no, I'm gonna be doing that. So it's interesting. Villains.
Khan, I'm joking. Villains. So apart from Rishi Sunak,
villains that are not political.
Oh, again, there's so many. Do you know what? Joanne.
Right.
J.K. Rowling. I just think, again, like, you made a franchise that was a lot of people related to because they were left out or because they felt they didn't belong. And you've completely twisted it. And when you look back, it's weird now seeing like the different things of like, you know, the only Asian character being called Cho Chang and things like that. You actually see the way that she was thinking when it wasn't entirely clear when you're a child, you know. But I think I don't understand how you can have that much power and influence and money and credibility, and then just to shit on a group of people. And I think as well, like, I watched one of her interviews once, just because, know your enemy. And she said that because her partner's a doctor, she knows about this science stuff, and it's like, how does it mean you know about this? Like, it doesn't. Like, your husband could tell you anything. You don't just believe it. But I think that I don't know. I could go in a whole rant about that, I think. But I think
no, you'll be very welcome to come back on and rant about it. I mean, it's the same for I think we talk about this on Labour Social sometimes. First the comments came out, and then the essay, and then all the other stuff, and it was kind of really hurtful. And I thought, okay, well, I don't really like the author anymore, but I like the art. I like that. I can still watch the films, and my partner loved the books. And now we can't even watch the films or look at the books anymore, and we've gone so past that. And it's one of the really big disappointment, because at a time when I was vulnerable, that it did feel something magical. And it is a big disappointment.
Taking it away. But I think that the good thing, I mean, again, silver lining, I'll try. I read about her. She made a donation recently of £70,000 to an anti-trans charity. So in response to that, I am this year trying to beat that for trans charities. Yeah, I thought like 70 grand and 1 pence or something, just but no, that's I think that I don't know if you heard about the Storyhouse incident. So I was actually heckled. I did a panel the other weekend, and a bunch of people came in shouting transphobic stuff at me because the talk wasn't about trans people. It was about AI stuff and freedom of speech. And there were a bunch of transphobes outside, and they were all sort of heckling people, and the police got called on them. They blamed me for it, which, I wouldn't call the police on anyone. And then they came into the talk and paid tickets to see my talk. Waited to the end and then called me a liar, said that I don't agree with freedom of speech because I wouldn't let them talk. And I said, I do agree with freedom of speech as long as it's not hateful and perpetuating ideologies that are very dangerous. But luckily they paid tickets, so all of that money is going to a trans charity. So in reality they didn't do too much. But yeah, I think I don't understand it.
Wow. It becomes obsessive when you go down that gender critical rabbit hole. It becomes obsessive. I've never seen anybody pull back, but
like it's a conspiracy theory. That's what it reminds me of. Yeah.
Well, it's a bit like, and we've said this on many times, that if you are a member of the LGBT community and you're attacking trans people, I always say it's like buying a boat and going out to the middle of a lake and blowing a hole in the bottom of it, because it's the same boat. We're on the same boat.
Yeah.
Or another image is the Titanic. The trans people are at the front under the waterline, and LGBT people and women are at the top. But it's all going to go we're all going to go down together if we don't fight together. Yeah. So the people attacking trans people are really attacking themselves. It's a comment that gender critics will attack me on all the time, because you're a bloke. And so, but it is, rights, women's rights, trans rights, LGBT rights. Whoever anybody gets an extra right, the cake gets bigger. It doesn't get smaller, the rights cake. So it is that ridiculous. But I love the way you're playing that. That's excellent. Putting that karma back. So let's look at. I know, obviously, the Sarah Everard vigil was how I came to know who you were. Can you tell maybe some people in the audience that don't know what happened and your experience of that? Would you, if you're okay sharing, would you just give us a summary of what happened and the result?
Yeah. God, it's weird that it's like 3 years ago.
No, it still feels quite recent for me. Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of stuff was going on at that time anyway. I just lost my uncle as well. So there was a lot, I was already grieving, and then I saw what happened to Sarah, and I thought, oh my God, I can't imagine what her family's going through. And yeah, I think so. I went there with one friend. I'd never been to a protest before, been involved in activism really. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd done things before, but not, I wasn't an activist. And then I went there, and I think seeing the way that the police handled women, like, I think people don't understand how quickly it happened and how heavy-handed it was. It wasn't, oh, we're screaming at police so that they've done this. It was police were heavy-handed with women that were just stood there doing nothing. And so at one point, this police officer got his whole arm around this girl's neck and started squeezing it. And we all had to grab his arm off her. Like, that was the kind of things that was happening for like a couple of hours. It was a couple of hours that this stuff was happening. So I was running around trying to film bits, trying to like break things up. And then eventually, it was just me and 4 other women. I was like, I can't get off this bandstand because, I just imagined if I get off and I see someone get hurt and I think I could have done something to prevent that. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't live with myself, I don't think. So I stayed there, and I remember saying to the person next to me, we were holding onto the handrail, and it was like, I couldn't even fit my whole hands around the handrail because it was like, it's like a T shape like that. So as you put your hands around, it was like against metal, and it was so cold as well. So many people around me, all with their phones out and lights shining in my face. And I was just like, oh my God, this is terrifying. And then I said to the person next to me, I said, are you here until the end? She was like, yeah, you? And I was like, yeah. So we were like, almost as well, felt like Titanic. You know, when Titanic goes out and you're like, this is it. We thought this is going to be bad. Because where the bandstand was like a circle, there were police around the perimeter, and we were on the perimeter as well. So what they were trying to do, we thought as well, was if they pull us into the center of the circle, they can do what they like to us, and no one's going to see because they're all covered around, the barrier. So then I'm like at the edge, and I'm seeing this person in an orange visor. He's like a legal advisor person. And he's saying, don't tell him anything. Don't say your name. You don't have to give him any details. And I was like, oh, okay. Because I've never been involved in the police before. So I was like, okay, I'll just not say anything. This guy's like grabbing my arm, this police officer saying, what's your name? What's your name? And I'm just like fucking looking around, like trying to ignore him and not trying to piss him off. And then I hear this noise. It haunts me now because like when I hear the siren noise, it really freaks me out. I get the same sort of like, I think it's PTSD. But they made this siren noise and then threw me backwards. I think they took another girl first, and the screams, it was like being in a horror film because everyone out there was screaming of like, shit, they've pulled them backwards, are going to hurt them. Guys were trying to jump up to try and like save us basically. Like props and thank you to anyone who was trying to help me in that situation, by the way, because I don't know who them people were, but like, it was just a lot, like being thrown backwards. I think I screamed fuck the patriarchy as I was thrown to the floor as well, which was a little bit embarrassing, but go down in style, I guess.
Yeah.
But I was then I looked up and there's just cameras everywhere. And I kept saying, I was like, you have my permission to use these photos. You have my permission to use these photos over and over again. Because I was like, these are never going to get released. Do you know what I mean? I really didn't know how much of a big deal it was. And then I was the last one to be pulled off the bandstand. So everyone else went off first in handcuffs. And I was put in handcuffs, pulled up. And I said to them, like, why didn't you arrest the murderer? And they said, oh, we did. And I was like, no, but after you found out all of this stuff, like he was done for indecent exposure, like before that. And I remember as well, like the videos that came out afterwards on TikTok, like, oh, how can they arrest the murderer if they didn't know who he was and things like that? Like, oh, they're psychic. And like, you don't know what's happened with this situation. And then when I was at the forefront, like about to be taken off, the police officers next to me, one of them said, I don't know about you, mate, but I've got my hand on my baton. And I was like, shit. I was like, I have to, cause these police officers like up here, I'm like, they're gonna beat the shit out of these people that are trying to help me, and they're doing is like, you okay, you okay? I'm like, yeah, it's fine, like just move out the way. So I shouted, I said, guys, he's got his hand on his baton, move back, like that. Everyone's like moving back, but the police officer was like, she's antagonizing the crowd, move her back. So I was like, move backwards, and then there was like 10 police officers surrounding me trying to like make sure that I'm not antagonizing the crowd. I was like, I'm warning them that you're not gonna, like, don't beat them up. And then after that was just a blur because I went viral, and I don't know, it feels like one of them moments of just, it's life changing, but it was terrifying, really terrifying. I don't think I'll never experience anything like that. I get touch wood because that's terrifying, but you know, yeah, very scary.
But yeah, I mean, that sounds, thank you for sharing that. But I suppose the only good silver lining is look what it's done. You look at the things you've done since then. You're a face that's known, a campaigner. You've been pushing forward for feminism, for trans rights. Your talks on AI. I mean, that has, it was really an awful situation. But most people, I think if that had been me, I'd have crawled under a rock and never come up again. But
I nearly did.
But you've turned it into something, into something good that came out of something so tragic that you've managed to push forward and campaign. And so that, that is really good credit to you.
Well, credit to a lot of other people, because I think, to be honest, I was very down.
Yeah.
And I think with my emotions going all over the place, and a lot of people were trying to butter me up and try and they were like, you're the face of this and you're amazing. And so my BPD didn't understand what was going on. And so like I wrote an article that wasn't very good, and it was about, like, it left out a lot of marginalized groups, and I was just not ready for it at all. I don't think you ever can be ready for something like that, but I think there's a lot of people that have helped me a lot along the way. And I think because I've been in the position where you've got no voice.
Yeah.
I've been in a place where I've had no voice and no one's listening to me. So I feel like it's just a responsibility. If you get that platform, it's a responsibility. You should be using it in the right way.
Yeah, and I really think that you have. So well done.
Thank you.
So we're coming towards the end, but I wanted to, this is obviously a Labour non-affiliated channel. What do you think Labour should do if they get into power? Fingers crossed. What do you think what would you want them to do as a political party?
Not be so on the fence about things, which I think a lot of politicians are always on the fence because they try and win votes. But I think it's really not that hard to advocate for people. I think they should fully either educate themselves on certain things, or, just you've got to know what you do. If you're in politics, you're in the government. If you get in and that's it, you're in, why not be like, you know what, the things that we support and the things that our supporters probably lean on supporting are trans rights, women's rights, Black Lives Matter. There are so many things that matter to people right now that just aren't even being looked at, and actually are at detriment because of the government. Like, the Tories are so awful with it. I just think Labour's stance on a lot of things should be peaceful, should be, I don't know. I'm just hoping that if Labour get in, just one thing, just one, is that they just go, actually there's a lot of hate around, and let's put some things in place to stop that hate from happening. And they'll never hear it come out of Labour's mouth. Do you know what I mean? Because I think the Tories perpetuate a lot of hate against marginalised groups. Yeah. And I just think if Labour start doing that, I mean, they've already done bits of it, and it's like, why are we point scoring here? Just, if you win, go. That's what I would do if I was Keir Starmer. But if I was, I would fully say, listen, we're in. I've revised the legislation on what we've got at the moment.
Yeah.
And actually, we shouldn't allow conversion therapy for anyone. We need support in education system, and the allowance for people to be their true selves without discrimination. Women need to live in safety as well. So there needs to be more legislation around that. Learn about AI, learn about, do you know what I mean? Like, just, it's not that hard. It's not that hard. If I can do it, Kia can do it,
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, toughening hate crime, especially against LGBT people, because if they're not going to do the other things that they should be doing, well, the end result is protecting the people that are at the receiving end of the things that they should have protected us from.
Yeah.
And I think that, with the staggering increase in hate crime against trans and LGBT people right now, I would hope they would put some legislation and they're a bit more proactive. Gen Z's coming, the most inclusive generation. 28% of them are LGBTQI. That's a vote winner. Not a handful of nasty people hanging out in Parliament trying to get people's ear. It's the next generation of voters, and people coming into the workplace who have influence, who don't read the newspapers that these politicians are influenced by. So I think there's a whole world change coming. It's not risky to be trans supportive, LGBT supportive, or to be women's rights supportive, or to be right across. It isn't going to lose you votes. But so walking that fine line, which is what the Conservatives are doing between the middle and the right, it's impossible. Just take a stance. It's safe. If you want to rejoin the EU, rejoin the EU. You could say that because the stats say lots of people want to do that. So there's lots of, they need to do some analysis of the people that vote them in my view. So my last question to you is, you've got a magic wand. It's not a Harry Potter wand. It's a proper one from a proper, and you can change one thing. It doesn't have to be about feminism, but it can be. You can change one thing in the world, just one. What would it be?
Like anything, because I've got something in my head, but I heard it from somewhere else. And I'll say it, and if it doesn't fit in with the question, I'll come.
No, it's your magic power. You get it's what you can't wave it and say, give me 100 more of these. You get one.
What I'm gonna do is say, oh, I was gonna say it, and then actually no, because that's gonna affect other people. So I was gonna say, to make it like you cannot lie in court, like physically you cannot lie.
Yeah.
Because that would say, but some people need to lie sometimes.
The little white lies.
Yeah, and that might affect other groups. I didn't think about that properly. So I think I would there's so many things. My head's going mad. I'm like, because the first thing that comes to mind is like, if I had like £1 billion myself, because I think I'd be able to solve so many different things.
Yeah.
Because I don't want £1 billion. What do I need that for? I've got a roof on my head, food in my fridge. I'm good. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, things that I would change, I'd get a bloody plane and get everyone from Gaza. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd create housing for people in the UK.
You could step it up and go, no war ever.
Literally, well, yeah, but then sometimes war is not necessary, but on a different scale.
Yeah.
It's a hard one, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
But I think if I had unlimited money, because and money doesn't solve everything, but if I could, like I said, I would do so many things, but I know so many other people who do other things. Like I'd give money to Chantel so she could do what she needs to do in her different things. And then, do you know what I mean? Even you, Graham, whoever needs to, do you know what I mean? Like just give out the world so that everyone can sort the issues that they need to sort out. Because that sounds great, doesn't it? Imagine all these little pools of, it would just be, and then I'd make loads of green spaces where people could grow their own food as well.
I love it. So it's you want resources. That's your one wish. I want unlimited resources to give to other people.
Yeah, basically.
Perfect. I like that. That's a really good way to finish. And I hope we'll have you back on to talk about AI on another occasion, because that is something that we could talk right across the intersectional on that. And that would be really fascinating. So I hope you'll come back and talk to us again, Patsy. But for now, Patsy Stevenson, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to Labour Social.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And we'll see you at the next one. Bye-bye.